Okay, let's start from right here, Dustin. I'm going to say three, two, one, and then I'm going to actually introduce ourselves, and then we'll dig right in. So let's push the recorder here. Three, two, and one. Hello and welcome or welcome back to another exciting episode of PAR right here on Aaron's Opinion Podcast and Aaron's Opinion TV. PAR, the segment that launches every single Sunday at 12 o'clock, the only segment of the week where we talk about philosophy and religion. I like that. Hey, by the way, we're joined by our great friend, great buddy in the community here, Dustin Lindberg. He's also a YouTuber. Usually, we hope that Eden, our great friend Eden the Wise, we hope that his wisdom will be coming into the studio here at any moment. Dustin, first of all, don't forget to mention your YouTube channel. And then, so tonight we're going to talk about ancient Greece. And Dustin, I'm going to basically turn the mic over to you. Please mention your YouTube channel, and then from there, dive into ancient Greece.
My my YouTube channel is called Dustin Lindberg, and when you type it in YouTube, I'm not the priest one, I'm the other one, because there's like two Dustin Lindbergs on YouTube. So the priest Dustin Lindberg does make good like Bible content if you like that, but I'm the one that makes the non-Bible content. So and then that's me on YouTube. On Instagram, I'm Dustin Lindberg 2. And then I run the Minnesota's Blind and Visually Impaired community on Facebook. And on Twitter, I'm Dustin the Blind Minnesotan. And on Spotify, my podcast is called Dustin the Blind Minnesotan. And today we're talking about ancient Greece. And ancient Greece, disabled people were were respected in some terms and disrespected in the other terms. And this is all based on theory. I've double checked my knowledge by reading articles and scientific studies. And we just have to remember that disabled people, so far what we know about them in the past is based on other people's writings. A lot of disabled people in the past were poor, broke, and they didn't get a lot of documentation about them. A lot of documentation we have based on historical records are done by disabled people who are wealthy, well-to-do, and had the time to document the world about disabled people. So like this is all like theory, but we don't know if it was true or not, because this is all done based on one or two or three famous disabled people's perspective. So we don't know how much is truly true, but we don't know how much of it's truly false either. Based on my readings, the Greek civilization treated each kind of disability different, and how bad your disability was too, you were treated different. So pretend if you were born deformed, right? And you had a hole in your lip, or if you're missing an eyeball, or if you're missing an ear, or you mean a lot of those people, like if you still had your limbs, like if you had still, because you're only missing one arm and you were still born with two legs, one arm, and a full set of ears, and they worked and your vision worked, they would still keep you. A lot of like Athens, Sparta, like the big ones that actually did document, they would keep you alive because they can say, okay, he still has one arm, he still has legs, this baby still has vision, and this baby can still hear, and this baby still has a good mouth, he's only missing an arm. And they would use you, they wouldn't put you in the military, but they would use you to make like saddles for horses. They'll have you make shoes, because with those you only need one arm to make those. Or they'll have you like sharpen blades for, because why a lot of the Greeks, they had the rocks that spin, you use the pedal and you move the rock, and then the rock would be your knife sharpener. And they would, because your two legs would work, so then you can use your legs to pump the wheel and you will have your extra arm to hold the sword, and you would sharpen the swords. So they would use you for sword sharpening. They would use you because like when you were making saddles and stuff, the animals already killed and the skin's already there. And technically to sew, you only technically need one hand. It's difficult because if you had another hand, you can actually hold it better. But they would have you hold it with your legs and sew with the other hand. So like they had you, and because you were doing that, you could contribute to the community. And then they would give you, like, in return, the military would give you money because you're making something useful, and then you would use that money to like buy food and things you needed. Um, and then if you were like born and you had like a missing lip and your heart wasn't formed right and you died, a lot of those people died because they didn't have modern medicine. Because you're born with a heart defect, you would just die because they didn't have no surgeries and stuff to heal you or to save you. So they would like keep you alive as long as they could, but you didn't really normally live long because you would just be dead. And then people with, and then it also depends on how much you could contribute to society, because a lot of the Greeks, like according to some of these famous writings, they didn't really like cared how you looked like. They just cared how much your body could work. Because back then, think about it, there's no machines, there was no steam engines, there was no really, unless like there was plumbing, but not like Roman style plumbing. Roman style plumbing was like good plumbing. They had like basic plumbing, like very, very like worse in third world countries plumbing. And so it took a lot of work just to feed one person. And if they're feeding someone who can't help the community in any way, that person was a waste of resources. So then they just, as your babies, they would, like, you know how the story is Spartans would throw disabled people in the mountains to die. That's not the whole truth. They would just kill you quickly, like with an axe or something, because they were more homemade. They were more. No one wants is these days would be like, oh. But back then that was humane, because they could have you starve in the woods and get eaten and torn apart by animals, or they could just cut off your head with an axe and kill you quickly and have you have no pain. A lot of people take the axe over dying slowly by starvation in animals, but so a lot of like it depends. So like it also depends how you were disabled. So I read some readings, and they said the most common disability was blindness and sight loss because of work injuries. So a lot of people, when they're mining, remember, they didn't have like goggles to protect their eyes when they're mining. They didn't have like goggles to protect their eyes from arrows and stuff during war, because back then goggles and all that didn't exist. And then back then, when people got older, they got cataracts. And back then, there was no eye surgery for cataracts. So when you got older, everyone just got blind if you did survive to old age, because there was no surgery to remove cataracts. So what happened was, though, most seniors were just blind or low vision because they had cataracts that could not be fixed, because unless they take out their whole eyeballs, and they became blind. So it became how the story it was different how you became blind. If you became blind in a war or during work injury or something, they treated you different because you got it helping your society, helping your tribe, helping your village become successful and get resources. But if you were born blind or born like not able to speak or born deformed, they saw you sometimes, if you were like missing a limb or missing an ear, they saw you being punished by the gods. But they would have you. But if you could still help the community, they would still have you help the community, because it will help you redeem yourself with the gods, and then your next life you wouldn't be born disabled. But if you were blind or low vision, that was different. Because according to some stories, if you're blind or low vision and the rest of you worked, it was a sign that the gods were not there to punish you. The gods blinded you because they wanted you to only see visions from them. Because your body still worked and you could still do everything a normal person can do, but you couldn't just see. You could still hear, you could still taste, you could still move around. And so the Greeks still saw you as useful. But they just thought that you were, like, definitely the Athens area, thought you were just blind because the gods still want you to move around and do things like everyone else, but they only wanted you to see their visions and their images. And in Athens, during the battle, everyone kind of knows it as 300 because the movie 300 shows it. In the second movie, a lot of the rowers in the navy of the Athens were blind because they, like, your arms can move, your legs can still move. You just can't fight. So what they did was they had the blind people be the rowers of the navy ships, and because if the captain could see and tell them which way to row, their bodies can still move the way the captain told them to move to row. Because to row, the push, because remember, this would be for engines. To push a boat forward with paddles, you don't need to see. You just have to have functioning arms and legs. And then in Sparta, if you had no vision, you were like the artists, the poets, you were the kid entertainer. You made stories. You made things to entertain the community. And then they had you like do things like I read a story about how some blind people were advisors and thinkers and mathematicians in Sparta to help them invent new weapons. And the same thing in Athens too. The blind and vision impaired, because they can't see but everything else worked. Sparta and Athens would train those people in math and science and all that stuff, and have them make weaponry and new tools and design new armor and stuff, because the Athenians and the Spartans saw them, oh, the gods are not punishing them because everything of theirs works normal but their vision. So I'm like Homer, he was completely blind, but he was Greece's most famous ancient mathematician. He was a librarian, and when he was towards his end of his life in Egypt, in the libraries of Alexandria, and he wrote down a lot of blind and vision impaired people histories that were slowly lost over time, because after like the library of Alexandria was burned down during a war between Cleopatra and her siblings, some of that history was lost. Some of his writings, but be lucky, a lot of other people wrote about him. That's why we know he exists. And he was born into a wealthy family. Because he was born into a wealthy family, he had the resources to write and do all this stuff. And then and also, if you're disabled, if you were a woman, you were more valued than if you're disabled and you're a guy. Because if you're disabled and you're a woman, if your birthing systems, reproduction systems still worked, they would the Senate would, or the council, Sparta called them the council, Athens called them the Senate. They would say, okay, poor farmers, who wants this woman and take care of her, and she can produce you kids. So they would give the woman to these poor farmers who can't marry up to higher classes of women, because women want to get married up in ancient society, get more money, get more culture. At least that's what these writings say. We don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's false. This is what the writings say. And so these disabled women, the higher class people didn't want them, because they want fully functioning bodies to show their symbol and their status. So what they did was these leaders say, okay, this woman, she's like 95% functional. Her reproduction still works. She might just have slight loss, or she might just have a missing ear, or she might just have a missing finger. I mean, small things. We will give her to the farmer if he promises not to abuse her, if he promises to take good care of her. And her part of the deal is her only responsibility was you give him kids that are least disabled as possible, and you help him raise the kids, because back then you need the most functioning people possible to help you feed your other most functioning people possible. So a lot of people who were disabled were like farmers, smiths, clothes makers, things like that. And the Athenians would encourage people to say, hey, this person makes this stuff and they're disabled. This is what they can do. Please support them. Yeah, people made fun of them as they're doing those jobs because those are like low class jobs. But at least the Athenians were different. The Spartans just said, okay, we're making them the math people, the science people, the artist people. But the Athenians are like, okay, let's so the women, they're still worth something because they can still make us a population of people. This men, if you're a disabled man, you would do like more of the, we're making saddles, we're making weapons, we're sharpening weapons, we're going to row the boat for the Navy. We're going to make entertainment for children. So it's a lot of the stories and stuff that survived, like ancient Greece, were written by people that had some kind of disability or some kind of but they were mostly wealthy people with disabilities that didn't have to go be married off or to the Navy. They actually had time and money that they could take care of themselves without have to be part of lower class. So in ancient Greece and a lot of times before that, if you're disabled born to a wealthy family, you could interact with other wealthy people, talk to generals, talk to emperors, talk to kings, and all that stuff, and have good connections. And you could have a very good disability life. The same thing like here in the United States, because we get Social Security. We are able to like pay for basic housing, pay for food, pay for things, and we're able to live a more comfortable life, for example, than a visually impaired person who's not born to wealthy people in Mexico, for example, or South America, or so us Americans are like right now, like in China and India, are like almost like Greek like living. Like the state takes care of us. They find us jobs as long as we're working and contributing to society. No one really complains. So, but a place like if like you were disabled, for example, Mexico or Brazil, or like a modern day, you're going to be like the Greek terms of like farmers, or you have to marry someone, pray that someone who's not disabled will marry you, and you'll give him kids and help him raise his kids, and you better hope they're not so much disabled because they can contribute to the society. So the world hasn't really, unless you live in like the United States, China, or India, where in Europe, I forgot the EU, where there's like money, to like fund disabled people, so people like me, Aaron, and stuff can live a comfortable life without like being like farmers and ship rowers. It's the world hasn't really changed that much, and also if like you're a disabled person that lived outside of Greece was considered back then a very wealthy country or very wealthy area. And if you lived outside of Greece or or in certain Greece states that are poorer, life was even more miserable if like you were a disabled person. So if like you're a disabled person, like in Greece, it made in a wealthier area of Greece, your life was better. But the good thing, what they had positive is in these poor areas of Greece and society that I've been reading is like they were normally smaller villages where everyone kind of knew each other. And if you're a disabled person, like that could somewhat move and do a lot of things and still contribute to the village would take, everyone in the village would take care of you because it's like you moving to a town with only 25 people. Or you moving to a modern town with only 50 people. Everyone, and you're the only disabled person in a town of 50 people. Everyone will kind of like get to know you and they'll all kind of support you, and they won't auction you off or you mean, so if you like, and you won't be like used as like you will marry to this person, give this person babies and hope your kids are not disabled, and you mean, and contribute to society. If you lived in a village like with a small amount of people that could still have the resources to feed you, you were still you were still good off, but you were not as in good conditions as the people like would in Greece. And back then they had different worldview on people with disabilities. Like, okay, we married her to this farmer. This farmer promised to take care of her and feed her, and she gets to have a family. And she was happy back then because she's not dead and she's not starving and she's not suffering because if she gets abused, she can go if she could walk or leave the house, she can go to the council and say, hey, this guy's abusing me. And then he's breaking that contract. And then he gets in trouble because part of the commitment was he would take care of you properly and nicely. And if you're a disabled person who couldn't move and you had like cerebral palsy or that kind of disease, if you got it when you're a little kid, they would kind of like, that's not good for society. Bye-bye. But if you got when you're an adult, like, and you spend years contributing to society, they would, like Athens would have a fund for you saying, okay, you're disabled. You spent 40, 50 years in our society contributing. We will use this money to feed you and take care of you. That was Athens. Sparta had like a different system, but no one truly knew what kind of system it was. Because no one really wrote it down. And a lot of other like tribes or city states or whatever you want to call them in Greece did similar things. But the issue is a lot of the other tribes didn't have like a lot of wealthy people that documented. A lot of the documentation happened in Athens and Sparta because at the time they were like the United States, China, India, and European Union of the world. And Athens and Sparta were like United States and China of the Greek continent. Athens was more like United States, a democracy. It was more like everyone votes, everyone gets together, everyone let's help society, let's improve society. Sparta was more like China. You listen to what the king says. The king's advisors are here. You know what I mean? And if you listen to the king, you know what I mean, nothing bad happens to you. And then Egypt, was the same way. You have a king and you listen to the queen or king, and you know what I mean? So Athens had a lot of enemies at that time because, it was like the first democracy in the world, at least in the Western world. We don't know about the Eastern world yet. In the Western world, and they had enemies all around them who hated their ideas. So sometimes like Egypt or Sparta will write myths about Athens, and Athens will write myths about Egypt and Sparta and Rome at the time, you mean? And so we don't really know what is true and what is false, but based on carvings on ancient temples and stuff, they had like the god of creation, like he created tools and weapons and all that in ancient Greece, and he had like a disformed foot, and he married Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, and they wrote that story to give hope to disabled people and say, hey, even if you're disabled, you can become, and you die a good person, you can be and redeem yourself, you can become a god like this guy, and you can marry the most beautiful woman of all heavens and earth, Aphrodite. So so you mean there's like, so the Greek world is kind of like a mixed feeling. They didn't, there's no clear, there's a lot of myths, rumors, but the only thing we know are the things carved in temples that are not mixed rumors. Because there used to be like a Spartan general who lost his legs in battle, and they made him a chariot. That was his version of a wheelchair. And he got horses, and he rode that chariot into battle because the Spartan said your upper body still works. You can still hold the shield, you can still slash a sword, you can still shoot an arrow, it's just your legs. So he rode a chariot in the battle, and he died because, like, without your legs it's hard to kill things. But he died in a final battle because in ancient Sparta, if you die in a battle fighting for your community, you go to the afterlife, a good positive afterlife. So then when he goes to his afterlife, he'll get his legs back. So they built him this big, massive chariot with his horses, and he got a bow and arrow and sword, and they said, go for it. And then the next big battle, he went on his chariot and sword. Of course, he died, but he did kill some people in the battle, they said. But with his bow and arrow part, because, it's hard to slice people up on a sword on a chariot when you have no legs. But, so they said he died in battle. He died of honor because he had a disability, because his legs were kind of chopped off. But he said because he died in battle, he redeemed himself, and he is now going to be respected by the gods and by society. So it depended on how you became disabled, when you just became disabled, and how disabled you were, because they would try to find a job for you. But if you were too disabled, disease killed you, or they would kill you because they said they don't want you dying, suffering, and hurting the community. I'm going to tell you guys, a lot of us, we should be happy of modern Western medicine because, look at, without glasses, a lot of people be considered disabled, more disabled than right now. Without surgery to remove cataracts, all those people with that disease would be visually impaired or legally blind because they couldn't remove it and replace the lens in your eyes, so you couldn't see. You couldn't see. So you guys have to be really, really happy that we live in modern era with smartphones, pizza delivery, drones, modern like heart surgery medicine, and artificial hearts and real hearts. And we have to be thankful that we live in a modern time where all these new technologies exist. So now more of us disabled people are surviving and becoming some, even with people with fake no limbs now, are getting robotic limbs. And now they can do things that normal people are doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, cool, cool. I was muted there, man. You really talked for a beautiful, beautiful thing there. Really tremendously well done, Dustin. You've done your homework, and you love talking about this, man. That's so good. That's really excellent. Okay. Well, and also YouTube, because if there wasn't YouTube, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and Zoom. If there wasn't Zoom, we wouldn't be having this conversation either. So yeah, I mean, those are definitely things to be thankful for. So clearly you have studied extensively these things, and you were kind of, between you and I, or between you and the listener at home, you were all over the place. And what I mean is you jumped around from thing to thing, But that's okay, Dustin. You showed me that you did a lot of reading on the subject, and you definitely took some classes about this. So I certainly have some questions. One of which is, so when you take classes today in philosophy, what are some of the common theories that current philosophers today in 2023, in other words, if you ask them, so what do we really have to digest and learn from the ancient Greeks? What would modern day philosophy teach us about ancient Greek philosophy? Let's try to connect the dots here. What do you think, Dustin?
To to stay open minded and to adapt to change, because and never to give up. Like like those disabled people had it way harder than us, and they were able to make freaking swords, and they were able to sharpen like weapons, and they were able to like move freaking boats by paddle. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just like you like just don't give up. And I don't, it's hard to tell that, because a lot of people, what I say personally, like a lot of things haven't changed, but a lot of things have also changed. It's kind of, sorry, that question's hard for me to kind of
Sure, sure.
answer.
Well, I think
And what is the purpose of life? There you go.
well, what it really goes to show is several things. I think some parallels that I can draw to the matter is that it shows that life was very similar in ancient Greece. You mentioned how there was a lot of differences, but really people were the same, right? You mentioned before how they always wanted to marry up. Well, funnily enough, people want to marry up now, you know? So we haven't changed very much since ancient Greece. I do want to give further information. You mentioned Rome. And when we speak about this to the public, it's important to consider, and I know that you knew this, but you said the two things together, and this gets mixed up. Ancient Greece, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ancient Greece came way before ancient Rome and Rome, right?
Yes.
Right.
So most of the ancient Romans came from
very
Greece.
much. Well. One of the people. The answer is, when was Romulus born? That's the question. Now, if you know what year Romulus was born, then you would know when Rome would come after that, right? There was Romulus, and I forget his brother, but there was a guy named Romulus, and that's what Rome means. It means he named it after himself. So he could have been a Greek, but also too, at this time in history, I do know that, or I would imagine, I guess, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that they didn't really care so much about nationality, that whole concept of nationhood. I mean, they would have said they're Greek, but they wouldn't have cared nearly as much as we would today about being American. Let me put it that way. They cared a little bit, but like you were saying, they cared about not getting hurt. That was a huge thing. Not getting sick, a huge thing. Having food, yeah. Those are really the main things. Are you surviving day to day? That would have been the concern. However, or not however, but to give, further information and, further knowledge about it. Ancient Greece goes back a very long time, and that it's important to stress that people were living in this ancient Greece period for like thousands of years, like quite a while before Rome would come up. Rome was much more recently. So ancient Greece is way back. Just food for thought. But yes, you're absolutely right. What do you think about that?
Yes, it is true. But I because like the Romans came from a Greek city called Troy, the Battle of Troy. After the Battle of Troy, when the Greeks won, the Trojans left and they landed in Italy, and they fought off the tribes. So that's why Greece and Rome have similar philosophies, because it's like me and hundreds of Americans moving to Mexico City and saying this is now our city, and Americanizing it.
Let's I would like to respectfully disagree a little. Let's not bring Mexico into the mix. Okay, let's not make a comparison. There's no comparison between Mexican life and ancient Greek life. Okay, sorry, but really, let's try not to compare too much. But Well, why would you compare Mexico City in this equation?
Because that's, I'm just saying, it's like that was just an example. It's like, you
Right.
mean, because like the reason why Rome is the way it is because a bunch of Greeks that lost the war went
Hmm.
over there and made it the way it is.
Right.
If they didn't go over there and spread their philosophies, their Greek philosophies in the Italian peninsula, we wouldn't have the Roman Empire. We wouldn't have the belief systems of the Roman Empire. We wouldn't, half Europe would have been completely different. Our you, Aaron,
Hard.
your belief system, our
Right.
philosophies would be completely different.
Sure. Yes, I suppose. Yeah, you're right about that, but you're right that the philosophy of ancient Greece impacted the way our country developed, right? But I'm still not making the connection, but fully to where you're drawing that we would, you know, the answer of how much philosophy was used during wartime in Europe during the world wars and things like that to decide how the Middle East would be carved up and how that whole thing, the nation building concept, I don't know how much of that is philosophical and how much is political. To me, I don't know, but I would say
Because
that's more political. But what do you
because
think,
your
right?
philosophy changes your political stance.
Okay, there you go. Well,
Because
maybe you might be
because
right. Yeah.
because like the Greeks philosophy of loving each other, taking care of each other, that affects, half of that is built into Christianity.
Good.
And Christianity is what spread through a big chunk of the world. So pretty much when a lot of these people during the Crusades, they were fighting for loved ones, we're fighting for families, we're fighting for, and that was their justify. Was it right? No, but that's what they justified in their heads. And that all started with Greeks saying we must fight for our loved ones, we must fight for our families, we must fight for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and if that did not spread from the Greeks, it changes. Like when the Americans came, when the American colonies came from during the Renaissance. The Renaissance, the Roman Empire was destroyed by Black Death.
Right.
Europe was falling apart. There's a potato famine. A lot of the American dream was built off, like the Civil War from the British. It was built off the Roman Empire's planning and the Roman and philosophy, and that came from the Greeks. So a lot of the things us Americans believe in and we value, equality, human rights, justice for all, loving our neighbor, not beating each other up senseless in the street for no reason. You can
Mm-hmm.
trace that all back. It's a long trace back, but you can trace that all back to Greece society.
Right. Right. Definitely.
It's hard to
Definitely.
explain. I don't know where I'm going with this, Aaron. I
No,
just,
well, I know, I know. I now I understand what you're saying. Is that there is a correlation between how philosophy impacts politics, and then nations are built. Sure, but what I'm saying is, and you're right, you're correct. And what I'm also saying is nowadays, I'm concerned that people are not thinking of philosophy enough. Is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most decisions that are made today are made in the eyes of political correctness or politics or whatever it might be. But how often do people think like you and I and think back, well, what would Homer have done in ancient Greece? Well, probably very little, except for some of the philosophers that are working in universities now. They would certainly have an answer to that. Yeah.
mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's it's hard for me to come up with an answer
Good. And
because
that's fine.
it's such a complicated question. I don't know how to answer that question because
Mm-hmm.
I grew up reading the Percy Jackson books. I grew up read about the Greek gods and him fighting Greek demons and you mean all that stuff. I grew up reading that stuff, and then I grew up, like, if you look on my posters, obviously you see Greek theme 3D art on my wall.
Oh, really cool. Here, wait. Would you like to maybe move closer to the 3D art and maybe show us if you want?
Yeah, let me turn the camera around.
Here, let me turn off here, guys. Let's turn off my end here. Okay.
Okay.
Now
So
you're on full screen on YouTube. So go ahead and
yeah,
come close to
so
it and point it out. Go ahead.
so this is the Green Reaper,
Okay.
and then when you turn it, it turns into the dog, and because that's supposed to be the dog in Hades.
Uh-huh.
This one here is supposed to be like that's supposed to be Medusa, and
Right.
that was Medusa before she was cursed by Athena.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is Merlin
Mm-hmm.
from from King Arthur,
Okay.
and this right here is a unicorn because a unicorn. No. So this is a Pegasus. A unicorn has a horn in it on it, and now this is a unicorn slash
Mm-hmm.
Pegasus, whatever you want to call it. Each culture calls it different. So
Right.
I'm a big fan of like Greek mythology, and I have like a big Medusa on my buried somewhere in here, a big Hydra buried somewhere in here because I'm still setting up my apartment, sadly. Um, so I have like, and then I have like in my on my guest bed,
Mm.
I have like a big like snake, and on my shower curtain, I have Apollo on my shower curtain. So you
Okay.
mean it's just I am because I was one of those nerdy kids in school that's like
Really? Wait, Dustin, you nerdy never would have. What do you mean? I struggling to guess that.
yeah, my parents wanted me to read, and
Good.
I Lord
Good.
of the Rings was too long and boring. Um, the Harry Potter was too long and detailed and boring for me. I only could handle the movies. And my parents said,
Oh.
"Hey, Dustin, this is
Oof.
a you might like this Percy Jackson thing. We found it at Sam's Club for on sale. The book on sale, and I read it, and ever since then, I followed the movies. Disney released a new Percy Jackson movie, and then I just followed the book. I read
Mm-hmm.
the Red Pyramid. I read all that series books. The
Cool,
the
man.
the author's
Here, wait.
called
Let's
Rick. His name is
here.
Rick.
Okay.
If you type in Percy Jackson on Amazon and you type on, if you go to author's name and the on Amazon and click on it, it'll
Right.
show all his book series. I read them all. The Egyptian mythology, the Norse mythology, in a lot of them there is big differences, but a lot of them teach you like similar life lessons because no matter what culture you're from, like at least in the Europe mythologies, they all kind of believed in similar things
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they all had
Right.
influences from each other.
Right, because they were all people and they all were struggling to answer the questions about life, is what it really comes down to. Like I've explained to many people, we're very, most people around the world think that there's a lot of differences amongst people from Americas or Africa or Asia or islands or something. The answer is no, we're really the same. We might look a little different. We might like different foods. We might sound different. We might speak different languages. But for all intents and purposes, we're all people. We're all the same, really. There's very little difference. So that's why you saw so much similarity between that. Well, cool, cool. So how are these books structured? Is it like a history book that you can just read through and
No,
learn
no, no.
about?
It's a
Oh,
fantasy book. So what happens
oh,
is he reads. Okay, so he's very smart. He researches Greek mythology, and he
mm-hmm.
makes up this kid called Percy Jackson, and
Okay,
he's the son of Poseidon.
okay.
And because Poseidon goes around and sleeps with human women, and he makes demon slash half blood kids. That's
Mm,
half human, half god,
mm-hmm.
and they have to defeat the evil titans who are trying to. That's the sons. Those are the parents of the Greek gods,
Mm-hmm.
and the titans want to destroy humanity and destroy anyone who likes the gods
Uh-huh.
and respects them.
Okay.
So he has to like defend the human race because the
Right.
gods are too busy bickering against each other to really
Mm-hmm.
save humanity. So he goes around with his friend Annabeth and Grover, and Grover's like a half goat, half human. And Annabeth is the daughter of Athena, and Athena and Poseidon do not like each other in Greek mythology. So they have to put their differences together, their differences and they have to work together with their friend Grover, who's half goat and half human, to save the world from Titans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it's a good way to learn Greek mythology in a fun fantasy way.
It's kind of like it reminds me where people would write a book, kind of like so it's basically mythological fiction history
Yes,
where
because
he
one of the
write
gods they talk about it,
right,
like for example, this big battle, like in the sixth book,
right.
actually he actually wrote New York City before the Twin Towers fell, and he said like, and then so like the big Olympus was on top of the Twin Towers, and then the big battle scene, like he actually described New York City accurately before the Twin Towers fell, because the book was written like before then, and then this big Greek battle thing happens in New York City outside the Twin Towers.
Yeah, that's kind of like historic fiction
Mm-hmm.
where someone's writing about things that probably happened in history by doing research but then still creating fictitious characters.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Well, Dustin, you can send me those links. You send me over to I'm sure they're on audible.com, so you can send me some links on Amazon and I can just look it up that way too. But send me this stuff, man, cuz you're totally plugged in and I just can't thank you enough. I mean, you're really engrossed in this and I mean it in a good way. It's only a
Because
good
my
way.
parents are really into, you need, even if you're disabled, you have to learn how to read. Even if you have
Yeah.
you have to learn how to read
Well,
whatever
right
you
there's a
can.
great well, right there's a life lesson, right? We need to live a life of literacy, right? We need to be literate, right?
That's
To
why
have
I
a good
tell
life,
blind,
right?
okay, I don't read Braille, but I want all
Right.
blind people to read Braille, because that's your version of reading print.
Right. Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yes. Yes. I see. I see. That is that is very, very interesting. Mm-hmm.
and
Cool. Cool. Yeah.
and so like I like, because my parents, they were, my mom, she definitely, my mom, she's very strict on, you must get, my mom is not like you must get a master's degree, a doctor's degree to be successful. She's like, even if you don't go to college, she used to tell me when I was a teenager, you at least need to be reading to learn
Right.
something.
She's right. Yeah. Yeah, and there is a correlation, between being successful in life and having an active interest in gaining knowledge and things like that. So that's really good. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Cool. So, really, I would say, what are some other areas in this whole ancient Greece concept that you really want to learn more about? Because you seem, you're really, you have a truly vested interest in this. What else do you want to know about, ancient Greece?
A lot of the hard part is a lot of their daily lives were
Hmm.
just written down, so we don't know what's true or not. I wish I can go back in time and just, like, even if I can't
Hmm.
physically go there, just float over the
Hmm.
planet or something to actually see how they live. Because what if we go back in time and half the stuff we know about them is not even true?
Well, here's the thing. Neither one of us were walking around back then in ancient Greece. Okay,
Mhm.
if you're looking up stuff nowadays and you're actually reading these books and reading this material, much of what you're reading is accurate. Okay, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, we got a little carried away with the closeness in years. Mentioning Rome too closely to ancient Greece when literally they were. Well, it depends on what the year was, but several hundred years apart, and I'm being conservative. Several hundred years apart, or in other cases, thousands of years apart. In other words, I just want to stress that you do realize people lived this ancient Greece life for like generations, like thousands of years. People did
Yeah,
that.
that's
They
why it's
just
saying is complicated.
well, not if you. It is in the sense that we don't fully know, but actually, if you research, I'm sure if you Googled what years, if you Googled the Greek calendar, that's the other thing too. The ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks were both fantastic engineers, and they understood the universe. So surely they kept a documentation system back then. I'm sure they did. So what do you know, by the way, about the Greek calendar and things like that? Because from Roman times, okay, we
Mhm.
started to use the Roman alphabet and we started to use the Gregorian calendar and things like that. So talk have you looked into the whole calendar thing? Because that's where it
I
all
know, I know
started.
a lot of things happened in
Mhm.
BCE. That's the time before Christ.
Right, you're
But
right. Yeah.
I'm not, that's not the dates and all that are not my strength.
Okay. Well,
I
that's
have
fine.
I
Hmm.
have like I can remember when I was in history class because I took them because I had to take so many credits for college. Like I want to get my IT degree, so I'm taking this.
Yeah. Right.
So to me, that was my weakness was always the dates. Like my
Hmm.
teacher said, okay, what happened? I could remember what happened, but I could never really remember the dates.
Which, and I don't want to get into a rut of constantly remembering days and just only fixating on days and times. Okay.
Mhm.
But it's good to be able to draw a timeline so that you understand. You know,
Yeah.
Ancient Rome was around until 436, I think, at least 400 years. Okay. And then there was a big conflict, and I forget. But again, I just said it was around for at least 400 years. Okay, you've done an amazing job researching the stuff. But what I'm also stressing is that the majority of what happened, we don't have a clue because there were
Yeah.
like hundreds of years. Who knows? I mean, maybe they had public podcasts of their time period where people would sit down just like we are. They would say, "Hey, come over and go over there and get your glass of beer, and then come sit down on the rock here, and we'll talk about things just like this." I'm
Yeah.
positive that if ancient Greek people looked at us now, they'd be pleased to know that we're still talking and that we're still having discourse and conversation, right? So
Yeah.
that's very very important. But by the way, when we say discourse, you know why that word's important, right? You know what discourse
It's
actually
friendly conversation.
actually it's not what it means at all. Discourse, to some extent, actually means comes in the French. We have a word in my French language for speech. We would say discours, which means to actually speak to the public. So when we're having this discourse, les discours, it's important to remember that you need to frame your mind. It's a framework to speak in a public sense. In other words, I'm pushing knowledge up there to Minnesota, right? I'm pushing knowledge to the public, right? So that's it's just interesting, and it's just interesting to remember and to appreciate the great history of where all these things came from. You know,
Mhm.
yeah. So what are some you mentioned too about Homer and these other blind people. Have you researched obviously Louis? Now again, another French person, by the way, not to be confused with ancient Greece, but France has actually had a tremendous influence in philosophy. The guy that it supposedly invented Braille, his name is actually pronounced Louis Braille, is actually what the name is, Braille, which in English we say Braille. So Louis Braille was a very interesting guy. And you mentioned about avoiding injuries in ancient Greece. Well, it's good to avoid an injury today, or it's good to avoid an injury back in the days of Louis Braille, who was around in the early 1800s. Might have been 1850s. I'm not entirely 1800s at least. But have you studied, since you're so appreciative of ancient Greece, have you studied the life of Louis Braille?
No, because I did not start getting into the blind and vision impaired community until like literally
Right.
last year.
Well, why? Why not?
Because I did not discover my visually impairedness until I was
Mhm.
15.
Oh, okay.
Because I had autism and very bad ADHD, and the school system was trying to treat my autism and ADHD first. After they
Right.
got that treated, my doctor's like, why can you not? Why my teacher's like, why can you not see this? Because they were so busy trying to fight another thing.
Sure.
They did, and then my mom took me to an eye doctor that I could get along with, and she's noticed things that my other eye doctors did not. Like,
Mhm.
hey, he's something. There's more than just ADHD and all that here. He is visually impaired.
Right.
So, and then my first, so I'm me at 15. At 15, I didn't know I thought, oh my God, I'd be locked in my parents' basement forever. And I didn't know what my life was for me. And
Mm-hmm.
be lucky they had a rehab teacher, and she was visually impaired like me, but not blind. And she said, but she told me, you want to go to State Services of the Blind of Minnesota. I went there. They told me about the Blind Abilities podcast. and I listened and I
Uh-huh.
learned more about the blind and visually impaired people from the Blind Abilities podcast,
Hey, by the way,
joined the Blind Abilities
speaking of
Facebook group, and then I
speaking of
discovered you
that,
through there.
okay, well, okay. Speaking of no, actually, I think we found each other having nothing to do with blind. Speaking of that, Dustin, the great minister Dustin here. Hey, man, when are you going to get Jeff Thompson to come and talk to me? When are we? How are we going to rope him into a long form interview with Aaron on a Thursday? How am I going to be? How can you coerce the great Jeff Thompson to come speak to Aaron's opinion for a long form? I would love to have a long form with Jeff Thompson. Really would.
So the only way I know how you can contact him
No,
is
but
if you
I
go to
no, but I want you
podcast.
to. But I want you to do it because you're from Minnesota and so is he.
Me, I don't even know who Jeff Thompson, who truly he is.
Well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm confused. I thought Jeff Thompson was the Blind Abilities podcast guy.
Yes, but I don't know him personally.
Okay, so you just know of the guy like I do. You just know of him.
Yes, like
Right.
the only like I know, I talked to Matt Blind to Billionaire from Anoka through the
Really?
YouTube comments, and the blind gamer guy, Jesse,
Oh, I've had him on the show. He's great, Jesse Anderson.
yeah,
Yeah, really excited. He's
Jesse
great.
Anderson, I only talked to him about, hey, I need a computer for my job, or I don't know him personally as a friend. I know him as, hey man, I need technology help.
Well, actually, you go to his office and he's explained to me that he's basically your, in a philosophical sense, he's basically your parole officer. If you have a problem, I remember we were joking around about that. If you have a problem, you complain to Jesse. I remember that. Yeah.
But I don't know him like personally enough to convince him to come on a show.
I don't know, man. You're pretty convincing. You're pretty friendly and convincing, and you're a very good diplomat for what we do here in the Aaron's Opinion community. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
he's the issue with here with the issue with me is
Mhm.
I'm so much in the sighted community that
Which I don't
live in
understand,
Minneapolis.
but
To
right,
get to the visually impaired community, I have to take a 20-minute train ride
right.
just to get there. So I'm like so focused in the side, like the community here in Minneapolis,
Mhm.
that a lot of
Right.
the visually impaired and blind people here in Minneapolis, they're kind of like older and they don't want to be in this kind of format. So I have to go, if I want to meet someone my
Understood.
age, I have to go all the way to St. Paul.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll see what I can do, but no, I mean seriously though, man. I mean, hey, I mean if you could, I mean I know that he has a number. I mean I've left a message for him, just in passing. But hey, I mean if you could leave a voicemail on their podcast voicemail thing and say, hey, Dustin Lindbergh here from say your podcast, and then say, by the way, I do a lot of work with Aaron's Opinion, and we were just wondering if you guys would come over to his show for an interview because he's always wanted to interview you, and I would gladly sit down with Jeff Thompson and other great podcasters from around the universe. Jonathan Mosen, I would love to sit down with him too. But yeah, but no, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, that's good to know. Yeah.
Because the hard part is me and some of the blind people here in Minnesota don't see eye to eye on things.
I know, but Dustin, what we're doing is showing that people need to come to this format, podcasts like ours, right? And they need to sit down and pull up the cup of coffee, and they need to start talking about these problems and these issues and this philosophy, because it's the only way for our community to move forward. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
Because to me it's sometimes hard to watch the Blind to Billionaire YouTube channel, because
Yeah.
he's always saying, oh my god, our social security is getting low, we need more funding. Sometimes I like the guy when he's not making that kind of content, but he
Sure.
makes so much
Sure.
that content, it's kind of depressing. Like, he's always sharing the negative things, what's happening in the blind and visually impaired community. He doesn't
Cool.
show any of the positive things.
Absolutely.
And I commented on the video, Matt, can you make once in a while make a video on how to use canes again? Or can you make a video about how to use like some new tools again? Because he used to make, when I subscribed to him, he used to make those kind of videos. And once in a while he made a video about social security and how we need more. I was okay with that. But when every video is about that, like negative, like we need more security because blind people can't feed themselves. Like, I get it. Like, you don't have to make 3 videos like that a day, because it gets depressing. Like, come on, man, you have a sighted wife, you have a townhouse, you live in a safe community with busing,
Okay.
and why not talk some positive? And I literally said that on his channel,
Mm-hmm.
comments, no response. And you
Well,
mean,
that's
so
well.
like, so
Okay.
the
Well,
issue is some of the
Dustin,
influencers we don't get along.
okay. All right. All right. Well, that's his business. Okay. But yeah, I would love to have him on. I mean, if you ever, yeah, I would love to sit down with Blind to Billionaire too. I mean, I've known of the channel, known of the guy. Never watched his content. I know it's great stuff. I'm sure it is. But you're very right. I mean, it's important not to become too pessimistic about anything, and also to understand that sometimes people in our community are very shy. But you're very right about all these this whole variety of topics that we've covered this evening on another beautiful episode of Par, right? Philosophy
Yeah.
and religion. I like that. Dustin, you've done an amazing job. Eden the Wise, where are you? Where are you? Well, we'll catch up with him later. And no, I think that Eden, just like you, is another great asset, and he's also doing a great job. I don't know. I'll catch up with him later and see what happened. But maybe he had to go do something, or with church or the family or the kid or who knows. Anyway, I want to wrap up this evening's episode by, well, I'm going to ask you a question, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then we'll kind of bring it to a conclusion. So, if I put you into a time machine right now, and I sent you back, and I said, you're going to go talk to Homer from ancient Greece, and you can only ask Homer one question to really make him sweat, what question would you ask Homer?
What is the hardest part about being blind and visually impaired in your timeline or
I
your
think
time?
I think he would probably say, a philosopher that's a brilliant person like Homer, he would probably say the society around me, the people's misunderstanding of expectation. Probably they would say something like, it's just like today, man. He would probably say it in ancient Greek or in his own local dialect, but he would have probably said, well, don't look at me, look at the people around me. That's the hard part. I don't know. Well, thank you. Do you have any parting words or any other comments you want to make on ancient Greece?
Yeah, I want you guys
Sure.
to, when you guys have time, to go research on your own, dig, get your own opinions, because this is just my view.
I really, you know what? I gotta say, I really appreciate your humility in saying that. That shows that you're doing a great job as a researcher. Telling someone else, well, you go get your own knowledge about it then. That's a really good attitude and a really good thing to tell the public. But I agree, man. Yeah.
Because Yumi can, like, I saw the 3 articles I read as positive and hopeful. Like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, we can start our own blind business, support ourselves, and you mean, yay, go being blind, vision impaired, woohoo! We can start our own businesses and we can build our own companies, build our own wealth, and help the community. That's how I saw the article, as hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
But some of you guys might say, this is not hopeful because I'm not you. I have a different personality.
Sure. Don't forget. Don't forget to answer the Q&A. I will post a question on Spotify for you to answer. So we want to see some good comments, some good feedback on that.
It can be positive or negative.
Well,
We want to see it all.
Well, we do? Yeah, but what if I don't want the negative? Dustin, don't be sending me negativity. You did such a good job, and then you say you can say negative things?
Hey man, even if they say negative things, it makes the rating go up because
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but I don't want the rating to go up that way anyway. I want people to be informed and positive and all that. But you are right. You are right. We gotta have some hate. Come on, haters. Come on, get on those keyboards.
it's like those songs, like that song by Iggy. Even the haters make me cash.
It's true. It's true. But I just want the nicer people still. Okay?
Me too. I'm not saying I'm going to be
Okay.
be mean, but
All right. I thought you were. I don't know. I thought you were bringing on some bad karma from ancient Greece or something. Jeez. No, we want nice people, and but we do want, and I would like to see constructive feedback.
Criticism.
That's appropriate. Yeah, constructive criticism. You can criticize me, but you have to be constructive and professional. But actually, constructive criticism is the greatest medicine and the greatest catalyst for improving what I do here and what we do here on the Aaron's Opinion channel. All right? What do you think? You think that's an episode?
Yeah, you did good, really good, man.
Mostly, Dustin, you did even better, man. You talked for like 30 minutes until I interjected. So, all right. So, Dustin, again, why don't you for me to end the audio, and then you'll do it again in a minute on the YouTube side. We'll do it together. So, Dustin, thanks for joining us. Don't forget, follow the links in the description for more information. Dustin, take it away. How do we end episodes of Aaron's Opinion?
Help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.
If you're still watching on YouTube, don't forget, comment below. That's very important.
And share with your friends.
You got it. And like the video if you like it. And like Dustin says, because we got to have negativity, don't forget dislike it, because you got to have some negative people to pull up the rating. I'd prefer that you just liked it. But
I want more people to see my face.
Well, they're looking at you right now, and you look great. Okay, so that's where anyone should leave that. If someone says, "How do I look?" just say, "You look great." Okay. Like it if you like it. Comment below. Don't forget to share the video. Don't forget. You can also see right here on the end board. Don't forget, you might even want to watch the next video that we're showing you. Right here on the screen when the end board comes up. Don't forget, hey, push that subscribe button wherever it appears. It probably appears on the left hand of your screen when you're watching. Click that subscribe, turn on all notifications so you'll know when we go next here on either a live form interview or an episode of PAR. And things like that. And actually, before I go, because I don't really have any problem with me asking you this while we're still actually on the YouTube. I know you watched my live stream, and then from here I'll end it pretty quickly after this, but I just have to ask one more question. I'm sure you saw my video in Aaron's Opinion podcasting community. I was giving some observations, but what do you think of this concept of My Monday that I want to launch?
I have mixed feelings about it, because I can see it working if enough people if a lot of people put the effort in. Mm-hmm. But people are not interested in sending in their videos. It's not going to work. So maybe not do it every Monday. Maybe do it one Monday a month and just make it like an hour-long thing.
Or get enough information where I'm able to produce an hour-long episode. So yeah, I mean, if you're going through some sort of struggle in your life and you're blind, I'm basically going to say, put it out there, that we're launching My Monday. Basically, it becomes your Monday. The Monday where you can send in an audio file or a little video talking to me for a few minutes about a specific topic or question or problem that you want my opinion on. And I'll help you to answer it, and then we'll answer it in the podcast format. So see what you guys come up with out there. I think by me saying it, I think we'll get some entries from My Monday, and then be able to actually start putting together some sort of content for maybe a hour-long show, hour-long recording on that. All right? Let's see where that goes. Let's see what happens with this one. All right. Don't forget, guys, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget the channel. I'll send you another good video on the end board here. I'll send you another great video that you should watch. Don't forget to go over to that video and watch it. Give it some love. Give it a like, and comment below. All right. Share the video. Glad we talked about ancient Greece. Okay. So I look forward, Dustin, to continuing talking to you. We'll catch up later on, man, and pick out our next topic for next week. Okay. I also hope to catch up with our buddy Eden and see wherever he went. But I think it's nothing personal, man. I think he simply got sidetracked and just forgot about it, which is totally okay. All right. Like it, love it, share it, subscribe it, tell a friend. Who knows? Someone might really like this video. So don't forget to share it, like it, subscribe it. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow. We'll talk later, Dustin. And as for me, from ancient Greece